Hello, welcome to the Echo Tips Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be dealing with a brand new feature that came to the line of Echo devices, I believe this fall of 2021, but has been discussed a little bit, and is available on the newest line of Echoes without screens, that being the traditional Echo and the Echo Dot, the newest generations, and the newest generations of Echo Show devices. We'll mention which ones here in a little bit, but it's the ability to detect people who enter into the room, or are there no people in the room anymore? So this is commonly known as occupancy detection and how it can trigger your Echo to do different things. But before we get into that in any sort of detail, we're going to go to a brief message about our podcast, and then we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by New Vision at Goodwill Industries of the Valleys, and also made possible in part by a grant from the Virginia Board for the Blind and Vision Impaired. New Vision is a program of Goodwill that provides information services and assistive technology training to individuals with visual impairments. Goodwill Industries of the Valleys is a nonprofit organization serving Central, Southwest, and Southside Virginia. Goodwill's mission is to empower individuals, strengthen families, and inspire communities. These shows are provided for educational purposes. This podcast may not be retransmitted, sold, or reproduced without written permission from New Vision. Hello again and welcome back to the Echo Tips Podcast. As I mentioned earlier in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about how the Echoes, the newest generation of Echoes, can be aware if people have entered or maybe exited a room, and use that information to trigger different home automation routines or activities. So really, pretty cool. We're going to talk about that, and it's on the newest generation. We'll mention which ones in just a second. But I'd like to welcome our new listeners. We'd like to welcome you to the podcast. You might be wondering what you're getting yourself into. Well, you'll find our podcast are little nuggetized episodes between 5 to 15 minutes usually, where we try to tackle new things on the Amazon Echo, or even dust off some of the old goodies. And we'd like to welcome back our returning listeners as well. And because of both of you, we're approaching 100,000 listens to the podcast. We're really, really close to that mark. Okay, so let's delve right into this. Now, I would have demoed this a lot earlier in the podcast, but I didn't get an Echo that could support it until recently. And even then, it's only supporting a certain aspect of this quality. So if you were to go on to Google and look this up, you would find an Amazon article, and you probably would look for something to deal with people detection or occupancy detection. Now, depending on what type of Echo you have, whether it has a screen and a camera, or whether it just uses microphones, it can use either one of those in a variety of ways to help it detect whether there are people present in the room. Now, innately, it just doesn't do this all the time, for maybe you privacy advocates or whatever, but you can turn the feature on and connect it with routines. So to just high-level recap what a routine is kind of like where something happens, either a voice command or in this case, a person walks into the room, and it can trigger a series of events. The Echo could say, hello, welcome to the room, and play some nice music. Or it could turn the lights on if there were some smart lights connected or something like that. So you start to get the idea. Or at the end of the day, it detects nobody's in the room after 30 minutes or so, and then it shuts the lights off or adjusts the thermostat or something like that. So you kind of get the idea of the principle behind this. So first off, let's talk about the Echo Show line of devices that have a screen and a camera. So the ones that are compatible with this feature are the Echo Show 10, third generation and up, and that's basically what I have here in the classroom, but it's the one with the motion base, so it supports that as well. And that adds an extra wrinkle to this we'll talk about in a little bit. Also, the Echo Show 8, second generation, that supports it as well. And the Echo Show 5 second generation. I'm just reading this off of basically their website. So as of the May of 2022, this is pretty much the newest line of Echo Shows. Now, it doesn't mention the Echo Show 15, which is a flat wall-mounted unit now, but I would be hard-pressed to think that that doesn't support it or have an aspect of this, because I certainly know there's a facial recognition feature that can be turned on that device, so it's hard for me to believe that it doesn't have this feature here, but it isn't listed in this. So anyway, if that was a concern, be sure to consult before you purchase an Echo, especially if it's pivotal to why you want to use this feature. You may want to just double check me and make sure, or contact Amazon support. Okay, so with those, they use computer vision connected with the camera to do a combination of things, either the motion of somebody walking in the room or different things like that, to say, oh, there's people in the room. Okay? So that's basically how that works. And in the privacy documentation here, it mentions pretty cool that it does that all on device. So nothing's going up into the cloud at that moment. Once it recognizes it's hit that level where it says it's pretty sure people are in the room, then it might trigger a routine or something, and that may require cloud utilization to whatever, play the chime or do the music or do something with the lights, whatever the case may be, the thermostat. At that point, it might, but otherwise, it's doing this processing locally. Okay, now this is kind of really cool too. This is kind of nifty. Is the Echo Dot and traditional Echoes, even though they don't have cameras, can utilize this feature as well, and they use ultrasound motion detection. Ultrasound motion detection. Okay, so the Echo 4th generation supports this, and the Echo Dot 4th generation supports that. So those are the new form factor, the round like ball-shaped ones, kind of like a softball or a basketball kind of. That's the ones that would support that. Okay, so there you go. And obviously, as ultrasound motion detection implies, it obviously can't see with a camera because it doesn't have a camera, but it's using some sort of subsonic, ultrasonic, not subsonic, but ultrasonic frequencies that, we went here to kind of get a gauge for whether there's motion in the room. So, okay. And that's not unique amongst these kind of devices. Even I believe the Google Assistant is starting to integrate some functionalities like that. Okay, so there's the high-level thing. So let me just show you real quick my Echo. I set it up with kind of like a welcome routine. So when somebody would come into the room, this is what would happen.
Welcome to the New Vision Technology Center.
All right, so there you go. So that was just something I experimented with, and I've also played with it when it thinks people are no longer in the room as well. Okay? So that's a basic example of how that would work and would trigger something. So how would you set this up with a routine? Let me show you that real quickly also. You would open up the A-Lady app on your phone or tablet, and you would open that up and go to your More or button in the bottom right corner. You would tap on that. Then you would go to Routines. And then you would go to create a new routine. Now I'm just going to open up my phone here, and my phone's talking, but that might be good. That way you guys can follow along. I'm just using VoiceOver here.
A blue and white logo with a white background.
Okay, so I have just began to create a brand new routine.
New routine heading.
And you have these settings.
Enter routine name.
Enter routine name.
When this happens X. You say
when this happens X. Now that's what you want to go to. We're going to go to that.
When this happens.
Now the setting that we're looking for when occupancy detection or people detection is going to be under
Smart Home.
Smart Home. You're going to go to Smart Home.
Choose device. David's second Echo Show.
Then you got to choose a device. Now I think that's because certain devices, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, are compatible with this and others are not. So we would choose that.
David's second Echo Show. Alexa can detect when people are near using signals from your device. For example, Alexa can determine occupancy by sensing motion using ultrasound on Echo or Echo Dot or the camera on Echo Show.
There we go. So just the same description as what we read about before. So basically you get the little premise there of what's going on. And here I have a switch where I can say, okay, when people enter the room, when there's nobody in the room. Okay, so let me walk you through the other basics there. Also, it has kind of a buffer where you can set the time frame when these kind of things would be triggered. You can also set how often it can be reinitialized. So in other words, every time it sees a new person, will it reinitialize? That would be annoying. So like I originally set up a buffer like 5 minutes or 2 minutes or something like that to get an idea for how sensitive it is. Okay, and so those are the basic things. And then, of course, obviously after that, you can ultimately have it trigger a whole series of events. Flip the lights on, flip the lights off, play music, any home automation kind of stuff you might think of. So all of that. Okay, so what has been my experience with this? Well, I really have found on the Echo Show with the camera, it's kind of flaky. It's not the greatest. It's not like a motion detector you might have at the front door, or a convenience store where it goes ding, ding whenever somebody walks in. It isn't quite that solid. Now, one of the things I was going to try and do, and the Echo Show 10 with motion allows you to do, is as you might recall, it has this motion base on the bottom where the camera can swivel around, and you can even specify like its resting place. So like I could say it's pointed towards the classroom doors when I leave at night, and then theoretically in the morning it would recognize me or anybody walking in, and it would do its whatever. It would trigger its occupancy notification or its detection of people, and then to carry out the routine. So I was hoping I might be able to use it to notice the students walk in or something, and then it greet them. But it kind of came and went. Also, another thing, not only will the camera trigger it, if you actually speak to it, and it was convinced there was nobody in the room, that could trigger it as well. Because then it's, oh yeah, there's definitely somebody here because somebody just gave me a voice command. So really, I found it kind of flaky, not foolproof. Also, if the camera's not turned the right way, or I have the lights off in the room and maybe different lights on, it might not recognize me being there. And that's happened many times where it's run the routine where it thinks nobody's in the room anymore while I'm sitting here right at the desk. And so, yeah, not the greatest. Now, I think, like I said, there's some things you could do to curtail it where the camera's pointed, things like that. But I think is if you want it to be a foolproof thing, it's probably not the greatest idea. But you may be able to use it in kind of like a one-off way. Like, I'm pretty convinced it would at least detect me once when I entered in the room when I come into work in the morning. So you might set a very narrow window, say between like 8 o'clock to 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and with a buffer of more than an hour or two, say 2 hours, so that it can only go off once during that window and then not repeat itself. And, and then do a very specific thing, maybe say hello or trigger the thermostat or something like that. And then play with that and see if that is dependable enough for you. And then secondly, it could even clock me into work. That'd be cool. Put a timestamp on the calendar. The other thing is do similar at the end of the day. I would give it a narrow fine window, say, from like 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. When you detect that nobody's in the room and you give it a buffer that it can't repeat the trigger in like an hour and a half or 2 hours, then, it would trigger, the routine to, turn the thermostat back down at night or something to save power or whatever. So that might be an example. So yeah, I found it kind of flaky. Now, admittedly, we're using the technology connected with the camera and onboard recognition of people coming in the room and things like that. So the ultrasonic method using an Echo Dot 4th generation might be more dependable. And if I can, I'm going to try and test that out in the weeks to come and see if we can get a better vibe on whether that is a better way to do this or not. But anyway, it is definitely interesting, and it could be an effect of my environment. I'm in a classroom environment where the room is a good 35 feet long and a good 20 feet wide. Maybe closer to 30 feet wide too. It's a fairly big room. There's 2 entrances here. So, there may be factors here with the lighting and the fluorescence and different things that I'm not entirely gauging properly. So, give it a try. It's not going to hurt anything to give it a try. And like I did, I set it up with something very benign, like a jingle, and it would say something to get an idea how accurate it is in my environment. So give it a try. So that's basically it for me in this little demo. But it's time to turn the ears back on your Echo if for some reason you had them off. Start practicing some of the many things that you've learned. I'm David Ward for the New Vision program, and we thank you for listening.
Thanks, Dave. Let me tell you a bit more. Let me put on my official sounding voice. Ahem. Ahem. This episode is brought to you by New Vision at Goodwill Industries of the Valleys and also made possible in part by a grant from the Virginia Board for the Blind and Vision Impaired. New Vision is a program of Goodwill that provides information services and assistive technology training to individuals with visual impairments. Goodwill Industries of the Valleys is a nonprofit organization serving Central, Southwest, and Southside Virginia. Goodwill's mission is to empower individuals, strengthen families, and inspire communities. These shows are provided for educational purposes. This podcast may not be retransmitted, sold, or reproduced without written permission from New Vision. Phew! Thanks for listening.